This program is a presentation of UCTV for educational and non-commercial use only.
I'll introduce Amine Haoui, who is our speaker tonight. Amine is the co-founder and CEO of Sensys Networks, which is based here in Berkeley. I'm sure Amine will describe the business at length, but it essentially is a high-tech company that provides hardware and software services to the traffic engineering community. The company was established in 2003, has been profitable, I think, for 3 years, has secured 3 rounds of venture capital, now has 50 employees, so definitely on a very good growth trajectory. Before that, Amine has been involved in 2 previous ventures. More recently, in the 90s, he was the founding CEO of Diva Communications, which was eventually acquired by Innomedia. And then I think what's very important to note is that Amine is a graduate from UC Berkeley. He got his PhD in electrical engineering from UC Berkeley a few years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So Amine, thanks a lot, and I'll hand you the mic. Oh, you have a microphone, right?
Yeah, okay, so it's a pleasure to be here. This is an institution that's dear to my heart. I went to school here. My wife is on the faculty of the civil engineering department here. My daughter goes to school here. So this is, I feel right at home, but I have not given a talk on campus since I was a grad student in 1984 was the last time. So hopefully I'm better than I used to be. I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years or worked for one, but I never sat down to reflect on what it means to be an entrepreneur until the talk today, preparing for the talk today. So what I decided to do is to tell you about my recent company, Sensys Networks, and tell you about the business, its stage, the market we're addressing, and some of the challenges that we faced building the company to this stage. Because I think it's in the challenges that most of the entrepreneurial lessons are to be found. This is where the takeaways are. Then I'm going to sort of spend a few minutes talking about the various roles that I played as an entrepreneur from the beginning of the company till today. I think it is enlightening to know what you have to do sometimes to build a company. A lot of it you don't expect to be doing. And I'll sort of conclude with some of the reasons I believe the company has done well to date, and then answer your questions. And so Sensys Network was founded in 2003 by 3 people, myself, Robert Cavler, and Professor Praveen Varaya, who is on the faculty of the ECS department. I took care of the business side. Robert Cavler, who is also a Berkeley PhD, did all the technology development in the early days. And Professor Varaya was the vision behind the company and the inspiration actually for the business. He came up with the idea to do what we are doing today. He has been working with the traffic industry for many years and identified the need for a better vehicle detection system. And this is what the company does today. We do wireless vehicle detection and traffic data collection systems for the traffic industry. It's a government business. We sell to cities, state Department of Transportation, and the counties, whoever manages traffic globally. It's about a $1.5 billion market, and it's growing. And so it's not a huge market. It's not 100 billion like telecom is, but it's a decent market size. The idea for the company was born out of a research project at Cal that preceded our company by a few years to look at whether wireless sensor networks, which were a pretty hot topic about 7 or 8 years ago, were suitable for vehicle detection to be able to do better traffic management. And the result looked pretty promising on paper. So Robert Cavler and myself, who've been on the private side, we've been starting companies together for quite some time, decided to take on the challenge and try to see if we could build the product and make the company go. And so we've been in production since 2005. And the first 2 years, we had to do a very large number of trials and pilots with many, many customers. That all went very well, as a result of which a large number of positive reports were published. And we've seen a very fast adoption rate of the technology since then. So for the past 2.5 years, the rate of adoption has been phenomenal for this industry. Today, we have 150 customers, 40 states and 10 countries, which, for a very conservative industry is pretty remarkable. We are VC funded. We did 4 rounds of financing. The first one was a very small one, $500,000 to see if we could get the technology to work. And then the other 3 were more traditional rounds of 2.5, 3, and 5 million, I believe. And the last one is not a round that we needed, really. We were already profitable, but we felt that we could use some cushion and a stronger balance sheet so we could do bigger things. Today, we have 50 employees, and mostly here in Berkeley, but we have sales offices in 6 other states. And we've been profitable for quite some time. And so, as you can see, it's a pretty nice story for a young company to reach that stage. And we're very proud of it. And it's been recognized recently. In 2008, we received the Best Innovative Technology for 2008 by ITS America at the ITS World Congress. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes to tell you about what we do exactly, because I don't think many people know what traffic management is all about. And so I'm going to share with you a secret that I didn't know before I started the company. It certainly was news to me. But below the pavement, on freeways, on city streets, there are literally millions of vehicle detectors. They look like this. Sometimes you see them from the surface. Most of the time, you may not see them. These are these loops of wires. Actually, there are wires in the pavement that they put there. And when a vehicle goes over it, it changes the inductance of the circuit. And then you can detect the vehicle. And they measure the volume of cars, how many cars, per 5 minutes, per hour, depending what they're doing. They measure their speed. They measure the density of the traffic. And these are the basic parameters that are used in traffic management. So on freeways, for example, you have stations like this every quarter of a mile, every half a mile. And they are used by planners to know where the bottlenecks are. They are used by operation people who are responsible to make sure the freeways are flowing. And what they do, if the freeway gets very dense, then they throttle back the rate at which they allow people on the freeway. It's called ramp metering. So you have these traffic signals at the ramps. The rate at which they allow you on the freeway depends on data coming from these inductive loops. The other application is, of course, travel information to tell you how long it's going to take from point A to point B. You have them here in the Bay Area. They post like 10 minutes to San Francisco. A lot of the data is coming from these loops. On city streets, there are other applications, even bigger market, because they are used for traffic signal control. So when you have a traffic light, the timing of the light is derived from data coming from these inductive loops. And that's why you have so many of them. But they have a major problem. This is literally wire in the pavement. So if the pavement degrades, if there is utility work on the side of the roadway, the first thing they do is they cut the loops. And they're very hard to repair. You have to close the freeway for hours or the city streets. So it was, sort of a problem waiting to be solved. When I was looking at the market initially, when I started the company, I was doing a lot of market research, calling a lot of customers. There appealed to be unanimous consent. Everybody agreed that if there was a better product, they would use it. But nobody had come along yet with a better mousetrap. Hard to believe, but it's, that's a fact of this market. And that is until we came along, and we developed this nifty little widget here. It's a wireless sensor. It does the same thing as these inductive loops do, except it's wireless. So it has a magnetometer in it. When a car goes over it, we detect the steel in the vehicle very accurately, and we send the data to something on the side of the road we call an access point. And so every car that goes over, we send a packet of information. And we do this 24/7 for 10 years using relatively small batteries. And a lot of our IP went into making it last 10 years in the pavement. This was one of the big challenges. And so, it's the first thing I want to say about entrepreneurship is the first decision you have to make about starting a company when you need to know why now and why us. So here's an obvious problem. Everybody wanted to replace loops, and how come nobody's done it before? And you have to ask these questions pretty definitively, because if you don't, maybe there's something you don't know that everybody else knows, and you should be careful. Or maybe technology has advanced so far that it's become a trivial problem to solve. So in our case, why now is because about 10 years ago, there was a breakthrough in technology and a new generation of very low power wireless devices that did not exist before, that benefited from 20 years of cellular communication development and a new generation of very low power devices that make our devices possible. So it is clear that there was a technological advance that enabled us to create this product. We still had to do a lot of development to achieve the requirements, but there was an enabler that we understood very well. And why us is because we were one of the best teams in the world at wireless communication. And this transforms the traffic problem into a wireless communication problem. And Robert and I have built a lot of wireless communication companies in our history, so we knew we were one of the best teams in the world to do it. And the other teams were at Nokia, Ericsson, and Qualcomm, busy with much bigger markets. So we felt safe that we will not have too much company in the traffic market. But again, that's the first question you have to answer as an entrepreneur. Why now and why us? And you really have to answer it very crisply to your satisfaction, objectively. Don't believe your own story. Try to be very critical of, whether what you're thinking is true or not. And so, the product was adopted at a pretty fast rate. And today we have a fast-growing business that's profitable. And but it was a challenging business to build. And so what I want to do is share with you some of the challenges and try to sort of give you some takeaways from these challenges, because I think they're very typical of a startup. None of what I'm going to talk about is very unique to Sensys. And so a lot of these lessons are common. So first and foremost, the technology was very hard to develop, harder than we thought. It took longer, and we had to push the state of the art in many areas of technology. Accurate detection was difficult. Wireless communication in the presence of vehicle is not an obvious thing. So you have these sensors in the pavement trying to transmit wirelessly when you have cars driving over them. Cars have steel, which is not the best thing for RF. The mechanical reliability, so you're going to put sensors in the pavement going to last for 10 years while trucks are driving over them. That was a big challenge. And the battery life, achieving a 10-year battery life using relatively small batteries, because you cannot have a very big device in there, was another big challenge. And so let me tell you what we did for the battery life, which was the first thing we had to address before we even raised money for the company. We had to determine that we could survive in the pavement for 7 or 8 years at least before we knew we had a viable product. And so Robert Cavalier, who my co-founder working on technology, did a very detailed design of the product on paper, all the protocols, all the circuit design, and came up with an estimate of the battery life using the latest components that we could use and some of his own ingenuity in the design, and came up with about 5 or 6 months initially, which was very encouraging, because that means that with some improvement you can get potentially within striking distance of the goal of 7 or 8 years. Went back to the drawing board, improved it for another few months. So we spent literally a year looking at the battery life, because without a 10-year battery life for 8 years, you have no company. So we spent a lot of time on this. At the end, we had an estimate of 2 to 3 years. And that was good enough to know that we were within striking distance of an important product. And we felt confident enough that we had learned enough during the exercise, we knew where we were going to improve, that we went out and raised money to build the first prototype to really get some really good measurements on the actual battery life. But what I want to tell you here is that had the answer been a few days, of battery life, we would not have started the company because that makes it a research project. And startups are not the best environment for research. Your runway as a startup company is typically, a few $1 million. Few raise a lot more, but only a handful. Typically, you have a runway of a few $1 million to come with your product. And research, is not something you can do for a few $1 million. So it has to be within reasonable distance. It has to be a development project, not a true research project. The flip side is, had the answer been 10 years from a paper design, if you could have achieved 10 years battery life, you also should not start the company because that means everybody can do it. And therefore, the competitive advantage, the barrier to entry when you're done will be nil. And therefore, you have to be careful on both ends of the spectrum. The problem has to be significantly challenging, that you're going to create some IP, but not too far from what can be done in a startup company. The other big challenge was the mechanical reliability. Having sensors live in the pavement for 10 years is very difficult. And that's an area where we had no expertise. And there is a lesson in this because we wasted literally 2 years on the wrong design. So I caution you not to start a company unless you really are a true expert in the area or you have somebody in your company who is a true expert. Of course, we were able to recover, come up with a better design ultimately. But we literally wasted 2 years on the wrong design because the founders did not know enough about the mechanical aspects of the technology to judge it, that this could not be done. And another thing, that what happened when 2 years into the company we already had raised money, we realized we could not do that with this design. And this was, so the initial design was going to be a surface mount sensor. We were going to glue it to the surface. These sensors here, we install inside the pavement. They are flush with the surface, so you core a small hole and you put it in. The initial design was a surface mount that you would glue on the surface like the pavement markers. And we had sold the company on the merit of just being outside the surface. We had raised money on that basis. We had told customers about it. And 2 years into it, we couldn't do it anymore, right? We realized that this design was not going to succeed. So what do? This is a really big thing for a company to be facing. The first thing you do is bad news, and there's nothing you can do about it except share it. You tell your investors immediately that we had a big setback, that we're going to looking for an alternative. And you tell your customers as well. People who are expecting the product have to know right away. Don't try to embellish on it. Don't sugarcoat it. If it's bad news, it's bad news. What matters is what is your plan B. And plan B is what we worked on very hard and come up with this sensor. Sometimes things like this can kill companies. In our case, we're fortunate that this design turned out to be better and more desirable by the industry because it doesn't have to deal with any of the detachment from the surface like you would get with a snowplow or maybe an excessive hit. So it's a safer product. It's a product can be used universally. So it turned out to be a good thing. But we really had some heartache at some point dealing with that issue. Another aspect of the business that was challenging was it's a government business. And there are some issues with government business for startups. The long sales cycle is one of them. The sales cycle here could be 2 or 3 years. So you have to be prepared for that, and the investors have to be ready for that. Otherwise, somebody's going to get pretty upset. The second thing is that the VC community does not like government business, because of the sales cycle principally. And so if you're starting a government business, you have to be aware of that and target the right subset of the VC community who's comfortable with the government business like we did. And government business also has a very slow adoption rate. They're very cautious. They don't embrace new technology easily. And you have to deal with that. And the way we dealt with it is that we focused on a small subset of early adopters. And I think this will work for any other company. It's not strictly government, but in this case, it's even more important. The early adopters, people who have on a mission to solve a problem, have a need, and we solve that problem for them, they will buy it, they will try it, they'll give you a chance. And you have to serve them. You have to really go beyond what is in the letter of the contract, make sure you are successful, because if you are not, your reputation is shot. But if you are successful with them, then they become your launch pad for the broader market. Distribution, very interesting. I think this is universal for all technology companies. What you're going to find is that the distribution channel is a very challenging thing for you. When we had the product in 2005, we hired our first sales person, a guy called Barry Matlack, who's doing very well with the company today. And when he was on board, I went around the country with him, and we recruited 15 distributors. These are tier one companies, really the best in this business. They've been selling to the traffic industry for 40, 50 years, and they really know the customer very well. We came back from that trip. We thought we really had it made, and we sat by the fax machine waiting for the POs to come in. It was a great product, great distributors. What else do you need? Guess what? 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, nothing. 6 months, nothing. 9 months, a trickle, maybe $2,000, nothing. And so after a year, really caught on to the fact that they're not going to sell anything. It is our challenge to sell this product. And I think there's a very good business reason for that. Distributors have a lot of products, and it's easier for them to sell the established, proven product. It's less risky. They make probably more money on them. Why would you want to go out and give 15 presentations to convince somebody to buy a new product when you can pick up the phone and sell what you already have? And so they gravitate to the current products, understandably, because they have business to run. And you have to go and do all the heavy lifting. You have to hire your own salespeople, because a new product requires a very devoted sales team that believes in it, that's going to have the missionary zeal to go and sell it. And distributors don't do this. Once you establish the market, once you prove that this product is desirable and there is a market pull, then the distributors will really ramp up, and they will let you leverage what you've done and take it to the next level of sales. And so initially, you need to do it yourself, and I think that is probably applicable to most technology startups. Another area that surprised us is that of effective delivery. We imagined that we would build a product like this one, and then we would manufacture and ship it, and contractors would install it, and the customer would maintain it. In reality, the environment is very different. The contractors are not always equipped to install complex technology, and the customers, who are the cities, are understaffed to maintain it. So what we had to do, we had to build our own field engineering team to complement what our partners did. And this was not part of the business plan initially. Field engineering was 1 or 2 people. Today, it's the biggest group in the company. And luckily, the gross margin of the product can support such a team. But it was something we had not taken into account. And the takeaway here is that when you build a product company, don't focus on technology, but look at the whole product. Look at the market requirements, the technology development, how you're going to sell it, how you're going to support it, how you're going to install it, all the way to a satisfied customer. Because hidden in any of these phases could be the gotcha that could kill the business. In our case, it did not kill us. It made us stronger. But this was also a lesson that we did not foresee this big function as being part of what the company would be doing. And last but not least is something that almost all startups face. We faced it probably a bit more in this industry, is fighting shadows. Companies have come before you, made huge promises, did not deliver. So you have a skeptical customer. So many people have come before and said they had loop replacement. We've seen that movie before. Prove it to me. And I think the only way to overcome that is do not overpromise. Tell them what the product does exactly. Support it. Deliver what you said you would deliver, and do it repeatedly every month, for so many months and so many years, until you establish reputation that, this company is different. In fact, they do stand by the product, and they really have a working product. And then it becomes a very important competitive advantage. Once you've proven that you're not like people who came before you, that you do support your product and your customers, then that becomes a very strong competitive advantage. And the interesting thing about all these challenges is that each one of them can be turned into a very important advantage, because once you've cracked it, Once you've cracked it, then it's very hard for other people to come behind you and displace you. Whether distribution, once you have a good distribution network, then the next company is going to have a very hard time replicating that. If you are in a government business, once you win the account, then it's yours to lose. And the technology, if it is complex and you manage to solve it, then it's very hard for other people to come after you and compete with you. And so the challenges quickly become competitive advantages, and you can build on those. So I want to talk a bit about my personal role as the company grew from 2 people till today, because I think it was a fun ride, and some of it unexpected. As a founding CEO, you have 3 main responsibilities in the company. The first one is you have to finance it, whether you're rich to fund it yourself or you raise money from VCs or from angels. It's your responsibility to finance it and to make a return on that investment. The second big responsibility actually is to recruit a good team, right? I mean, you have to convince people to join the company, share in the vision, and work hard to make it happen. And the third one is that you are the gopher. You have to do everything that you haven't hired somebody else to do yet, or you don't have enough money to outsource yet. And it's that latter role that has most of the surprises and actually is the fun part of the job, because you end up doing so many different things and learning so many different skills. And if you're an entrepreneur, that's what you like to do: learn new stuff, learn the business. And it's through these various roles that you get to know your own business as it grows. So in my case, I think the first thing that, of course, pre-money, pre-product, the first thing that you do is what everybody does. You become the PowerPoint king. You put together a stack and you present to whoever is willing to listen to you, customers, VCs, partners. And it's an interesting exercise, because what you learn in the morning becomes a slide in the afternoon presentation, and you talk about like you're an expert on the, on the subject. But it's a very essential part of building the business, because by presenting your business, you're going to be challenged by people who have different perspectives. It is going to force you to think about things that you may have overlooked. And the story gets better and more complete as you go. So after a few months, you really get good at telling it, but also the business itself is better defined, and you've answered a lot of the questions until a point where somebody's going to like it enough and going to give you the check to get started. So PowerPoint, presentations are a lot of what you do in the early stages. But in my case, I also had, we only were 2 people, so I had to do all the purchasing, of components for Robert, who was building the product. I was the lawyer and the accountant for the company, but also I was the first test engineer. And that was a rewarding role, a very important role. I had not signed up to do this, but it's something that somebody had to do it. And through being the first test engineer, I really learned the nature of the product, and the business. And the first thing that we had to do was to test for reliability in the pavement. So we asked around how you do this, and we were told that there was a pavement test machine. You can put a sensor in that test machine, and if it's in there for a week, it's like being on the freeway for 3 months. And so I imagined it to be, a small machine, in Davis Hall in the civil engineering department. And so I was shocked to see that actually this was Susie, that I became very familiar with. And this is the pavement test machine. There are 3 of them in the world. Caltrans happens to have one of them. It is managed for them. It's run for them by UC Berkeley at the Richmond Field Station. Inside this monster here are 2 very large truck tires that are driven back and forth with very large applied loads on them on a piece of pavement to see how long it will last. And so it goes on 24 hours a day, very noisy thing, and very intimidating to be in there. So I had to go in there, core the small hole, put the sensor in. You're always praying that nobody switches the switch on while you're in there, because it would not be a pretty sight, really. And so this was part of being the test engineer. The other one is, of course, the actual first road test. When we did this in Berkeley here, this was our little pickup truck. You see that blue rod here is actually a swimming pool cleaning rod that we used to mount the camera on it. And this was our first sensor here in the pavement. And that's how we found out whether the product worked for the first time. And I was in charge of a pickup truck for about 6 months. I used to drive it around and do different tests. And so this was one of the big roles, pre-money and, when with the first prototype. Once you raise some money and you have something to show, then you become the first salesperson. So I took these prototypes and toured the country and showed them to whoever would speak. And that's very informative because, they will challenge you. This is where you learn what the objections of the customers are. So it's a fun thing to do because you learn the real needs of the market by doing this. I was also the first marketing guy, used to go to trade shows, did the collateral, did the website. At this point, we had some consulting help because we had some money, but I was, driving this activity. And then you become the principal recruiter. That is the biggest function of entrepreneur founding CEO because you have to hire the team and you have to invest a lot of time and energy in picking the right people, making sure that you are assembling the right team for the company. And then I became the first field engineer. So test engineer is one thing, but field engineer, once you have a product, now you have to find out how to install it in the pavement. And this is very intimidating, So if I don't think for me, this was one of the scariest things I've ever done in my life, to be in a closed lane, in the freeway, when you have trucks driving by you at 80 miles per hour. I think it drove it home to me how difficult the job of our customer is, which people who maintain these roads, and sort of gave me a better sense of the importance of what we were doing. If we can cut the time that they're on the pavement from a few hours to a few minutes, it's a very big thing. And the importance for the product to be right. They cannot be out there, fiddling with something that doesn't work well. So I think there was a tremendous learning, thing for me here that I'm grateful for because I understood the business in a way you cannot understand by being in the office. To be a founding CEO is not a spreadsheet job. It is whatever it takes to build the company, and it's a lot of fun to be doing all this. Some of it, of course, you don't want to do it forever, but doing it is really what makes gets you going because you're learning so many new things that you didn't know before. So once you have a second round of financing and you have 6 to 15 people, then the role changes again. Investor relations become a lot more important. Now you have more money in the company, you have more expectations, so you have to make sure that you manage those, that you are communicating a lot with your investors. And I have the habit of meeting with them almost monthly on one-to-one, either over lunch or at least a lengthy phone call to make sure they're on board what the company is doing. And then there is the expectation of much bigger vision suddenly because you're successful in the first stage of selling the product. Now everybody wants a billion-dollar company, and so you have to start looking for the bigger vision and putting the elements in place. And if you're fortunate enough, maybe there is a bigger vision and you implement it. And then I was a very bad engineering manager. I was very fortunate at the time that we had hired Brian Fuller into the company, who put me out of this misery, and something I don't like to do. I did it because nobody was doing it. I was not good at it, and I was very eager to get out of that role as quickly as I could. And notice also that you're always recruiting. That role doesn't go away. It becomes even more important. Revenue stage, 15 to 30 people. Now you have, you can start calling yourself general manager. You have a business. You're buying and selling. There's personnel considerations, health plans, office space, bank relationships. So now you are really a general manager of a relatively small business but growing business. And I stayed as acting VP sales for the longest time possible because this is, it's a customer facing, it's the way you continue to gauge how people feel about the product, what the requirements of the market is. And I didn't want to let go of that role until, I really, had to. And, but more recently, about 4 months ago, I turned to our VP Business Development, Benoit, and asked him to take over as VP Sales as well, and he did. And so today, I am, I become the chief delegator. That is my role in the company, and it's an important role to play. And I mean, seriously, I think the message here is that as the company grows, you've played all these roles. You have to know how to let go of each one of them and hire better people than yourself at doing them. Because if you don't do this, the company cannot grow. You become the bottleneck very quickly. You cannot possibly be good at all these things. So you have to learn how to hire good people and watch them, deliver and grow their own teams and take over responsibility for their own areas. And your job is to delegate what you're not, you were doing and move on to the next level of building the company. And that's a fun thing to do as well. So why things worked out at Sensys, I think, so far, right? I mean, we're still relatively early stage, we're profitable, but we're still a relatively small company. I think, first and foremost, we have a very solid product. As a technology company, that's the foundation. You need to know that you have a very solid product, and that is on which what everything else is built on, right? We have a real market need. This loop replacement business, everybody wants it if you have a good product, and so it's a genuine need out there. We did not have to create a new market. This focus on the early adopters to make sure that we get some early references helped us tremendously. And I think what you should do here is don't take on more than what you can handle. You can only satisfy so many customers at the same time. So choose those that you're going to really succeed with and focus on them, make them successful, and build on that. We have very strong and harmonious teams, so be careful how you hire. Don't hire only for talent, hire for chemistry. People who work well together, it's very, very important, and I think it will serve you well, down the road. We did a lot of very little money in the early days of the company. We became profitable with having spent only like $6 million, which is not a lot of money given all, that we are doing here. And we never overpromised our customers or our investors. And so we have a lot of credibility with both groups. And I think that helped us a lot overcome some of the setbacks. That is, if you have never overpromised and you come and say, well, we have to change mechanical design in the middle of in the course of building the business, then people will certainly accept it and help you get through it. So these were sort of, in my opinion, the 6 most important elements why the company has been successful to date. I'd like to conclude by saying that I talk about the challenges, but it's been a tremendously enjoyable ride despite all the things you have to overcome. Working with a team of people like the people we have at Sensys is a rewarding experience every day. And seeing the benefits that the customers get from the product is also very rewarding. I want to share with you just one story because, I went to Australia recently. I had never been to Australia. We knew that they were using the product because we had sold them quite a bit of equipment. I went to Melbourne and met with the road agencies in Melbourne and was amazed to find that our technology was at the heart of the largest traffic management project in the whole city, the main freeways in the middle of Melbourne, 75 kilometers, with our sensors every quarter of a mile on the ramps and on the main line. And it is the foundation of their whole traffic management system. And none of us had been to Australia before, none of us. So that was a tremendously rewarding experience to know that you really are having an impact and you're doing something very significant that is beyond, what you can even see from, your own point of view. So it was very rewarding. And so with that, I'll turn it over to questions. Yeah, well, thank you for the. So yeah, you're right. I think at the heart of the success here is that focus on the early customers, and I think what motivates you to do it is that many of them don't have a good alternative choice because their loops are breaking faster than they can maintain them. And they are very dedicated government employees who are trying to do the right thing with very limited tools. So you develop very strong affinity because here's the product that can help them, and yet you understand that it's very risky for them to be betting on your product because they're one of the first ones. And so you really have to spend a lot of time meeting with them and sending as many people as you can to establish this personal relationship with them so they feel comfortable with the team and what the company can do. And the minute you sense that there is traction because like the pilots, then you really have to make sure that you share with them all your quality processes, why this product is going to work, and why you are different from other companies that have come before. And when they install the first systems, then you really have to be there with them throughout and hold their hand and make sure you don't let go until the system is working perfectly well. And I think it gets recognized, and they realize that you become a partner of theirs, and they start really having a lot more confidence. Once you've had a bit of success with them and their confidence builds, the product is so superior to the alternative that it really becomes easy for them to do more. Yeah. We never had that, actually. We were fortunate that on the cash side, we were never low on cash. I think the uncertainty was more when you had a big setback and the viability of the business was in question. For example, when we moved from the surface mount sensors to the flush mount to these, there was a period of a few weeks where we were not sure whether we can go forward. We did not know this design would work. And I think what you do is you communicate very openly and make sure everybody understands what the stakes are and what you're doing. I think people know that being in a startup has some risk in it, as long as they feel that the CEO and the management team are looking out for them and are open about what's going on. I think you're always going to be fine. And people understand the risk. If there is openness and good communication with the team, which I do a lot, I think you can overcome a lot of these setbacks. No, actually, a very good question. We were very fortunate that Professor Varaya has very good connections with Caltrans. He's been working with them for a very long time. And so through his connections, we had the audience. We were able to go in and present the product to see what they thought, what the features should be. And this was, if you will, our anchor account that we catered to, and that was open to us because of the relationship that we had with Professor Varaya. Another thing that we did, we got close to Siemens through an investment early stage from Siemens TTB, and Siemens is a very big traffic company. So through them also we were able to get the early requirements of the product and get to some of their customers as well. And so it was not cold calling at all. And you're right, that would have been very, very difficult. And in fact, even when we had the product, cold calling was very difficult for a long time. What I showed you here, this sensor, is a building block for a much bigger need in the industry. And so replacing the loops is what we do immediately right now. But I think the need for traffic data is much bigger than the current applications. I don't think most people don't realize that cities have very little knowledge of what's going on their roadways on a given day because they don't have enough data collection and because it's been so hard to put detection in the pavement. And so with our technology, we're enabling a totally new way of thinking where now you can deploy detection on a much larger scale, collect a lot more data, and build a lot fancier application that you could not build before. So we're opening up a lot of new markets that were not possible before our technology. One example is that we can put the sensor in a different mode where they can re-ID vehicles, so we can measure travel time on city streets to know how long it takes from point A to point B, and the host of new applications that we're building to make it possible to manage the roadways better. Yes, not entirely, but increasingly we're trying to capture more value in the applications. So you have the sensors, and then what do you do with the data? And yes, the software content of the product is increasing, in a very significant fashion, and will continue to do so because there is a lot of value to be captured there in the applications. How do we decide on that? We're managing the company right now for, these are still economically uncertain times, and the municipal market itself has uncertainty because cities are not collecting the revenues that they used to. And therefore, we have to remain cautious in terms of spending ahead of the revenue. And so we try to make sure that we stay very close to profitability, and that sort of limits how much you can invest in very forward-looking stuff. So we are, at this stage, I would say, investing a lot more in the current product than a lot of R&D. But we do devote a certain percentage. I would say at this stage, about 20% of our engineering dollars go to forward-looking projects to make sure we stay the technology leader. There is no magic formula. It's sort of it's a judgment call on any given quarter. But we're not investing ahead of the curve because the government business, it remains delicate out there from an economic perspective. Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you.